G'day listeners, you're back with Benny, Banksy and Bordy, the Basketball Blokes, dribbling all things Aussie hoops and NBL fantasy. And we thought we'd rip into another live stream on Twitter or Periscope, or you may even be watching this recorded version on YouTube. Is that right, Benny?
Yeah, so a couple of housekeeping things, I guess. If you did listen to our podcast last time I did this, I said I was recording it on this little thing here called a Zoom H6.
Steph wasn't.
I was an ordinary bloke. I didn't hit record. So the sound quality would definitely not be as good. So hopefully we're talking to the mics. I can vouch that we are recording. So those of you who want to listen to it on the podcast, hopefully it will be of a little bit better quality.
Much clearer.
Fellas, I am just going to make sure that we're not upside down and the like.
Make sure we're not upside down.
So
that's handy.
Feel free to talk amongst yourselves, or do some work, and maybe we've got a bit of an important thing that we wanted to say first. Right?
Oh yes, we were. Now, if you're not aware, the eastern states of Australia, particularly New South Wales and Queensland, are getting smashed by the weather, and unfortunately in Australia that means fires. And so we wanted to give a shout out to any of our listeners out there that are fireys, or just give a shout out in general to the fireys, and say thanks, and thanks for looking after us. Lucky for us, I guess, at the moment we're in Victoria and it's not happening, but it's only around the corner where Victoria will be in bushfire danger season hardcore as well. So big shout out to all the fires out there. Do a great job and we really appreciate it. So that's it.
Yeah, definitely, mate. It was pretty close to home for us last year, just in Gippsland. We had the fires, and for me, I just have memories of, I go up to my dad's place over Wodonga on school holidays, and he was part of the CFA, and just the dread of when you get the call. And as a kid, you're really worried about that. I'm sure there's a lot of families out there that are in the same scenario. It got to the point when I'm up there and you'd hate to see a strike of lightning anywhere, just because it was, as a kid, it stressed you out, man. You don't want your family to be in that situation, but I mean, these guys are absolute king legends for what they do, for sure.
That's it. All right, moving along from that. Last week,
well, we're not upside down, and hopefully people can hear us. So feast or famine with the hairstyles. Thanks, Joey.
Yes,
this is definitely.
That was Benny's punishment for not pressing record last time we did live stream, is he wasn't allowed to wear a hat this week. So
I swapped hair with Boydie.
That's what you get to see.
And Banksy's got the greys. So anyway, for those of you listening to a podcast, I apologise for our start to this. So last week, take us back, Banksy, because I feel like I've got the same sort of stress levels or indecision this week, just because we've got so many options. But last week it was all about injuries.
It was about dodging bullets and what was actually going to happen, and was DD going to play. We obviously knew Hobson was out, so we knew that was, a majority of the competition had to make that trade. Whether we go Rice, whether we were to go Webster, did we go Goulding and McCarron with Prather, obviously back last round as well. But the big unknown, particularly for owners, was DD going to play? Another game time decision, which as the other two have gone, he did play, and he done very well for you boys.
He did, and look, I tweeted on there. So, I guess I had the benefit of having Benny as one of my best mates, and he actually said something pretty late on about what did you say? Oh, about the rolling lockout, because I was a little bit silly, and I didn't actually think about the rolling lockout. So I actually had DD. No, I didn't have him traded. No, I still had him in the team, but I guess waiting till that Friday to make that decision for me helped me, I guess.
So the problem was, obviously, we had a lot of the trade targets that you wanted were Rice, Worldwide Webster, as Joel Kinnamuth has titled him, and the special fried rice, of course. And you had to make that decision without an injury update, potentially, if you want to.
Because that was the Thursday game, correct?
It was the Thursday game, so
took some cojones.
If you were waiting, as it turned out that we could, we had the likes of Tate or some. You had to work out away, and with DD potentially not playing.
Yeah,
so
you really only had the Sydney guys, so that was the risk as well. If you wanted to swap to a team on the double, because the two other teams on the double were obviously the teams that played on the Thursday night. So yes.
And how did you feel, Banksy, having made that decision not to go with Rice initially on that first game, played 18 minutes, 40 plus fantasy points from memory? It was looking like a missed opportunity because Rice was cooking.
Well, I think you were working, man.
I was working, but I was watching the stats nonetheless. But
Getting messenger chats from me.
I was, and I did float the idea. We had a chat amongst ourselves in our own group chat, and it was more or less, I guess, a Rice versus Tate debate as well. And I ended up going with Tate based on Benny's man love for Tate. And I think in the end, he didn't even end up bringing him in, did he? It had me sold.
Yeah, it's somewhat strategic, and I think I had the current competition leader, Nick Turner. He put a tweet out there, and I was like, I want you to take the risk on Rice because I'm going to go Tate. I'm going to play sensible fantasy and just all about those fundamentals. But we had some disaster. Well, it's fantasy. I don't know if I can use the word disaster, but we had some stories come through. So first one, Ryan Dizzle said, traded out DD for Tate 1 minute before the tip-off.
Oops.
And he said he just can't trust DD to stay on the court. And on that, even in his game, when he had those cramps, I thought he was done.
Scared.
Thought he was done.
Oh,
there we go. It's happened again.
Yeah.
So...
another good point here, Johnny Fairs just messaged in. You said, don't make the mistake of having your possible trades as your VC as well. If it's a rolling lockout and you want to use that the rolling lockout rule to your advantage, just make sure that your vice captain and your captains are set because they lock as of the first game of the week, correct?
Correct. Yeah, spot on. Not the first time we've heard that coming through, but yeah, good point, Johnny. And I think you're on the chat there, so good to have you, mate. Next, Ben Packer was then the next tweet. Banksy, you got that in front of you there?
I do. Ben Packer raging the Kings for not appropriately reporting DD through the week. Then I go trade him out. Shame on me for not knowing about the rolling lockout. So I could have held him, but would have traded Mirko.
So that was the thing, I guess. I was looking at Mirko to Tate as well. And, as we'll discuss later on, Mirko did pretty well. And finally, your favourite pronunciation, Rap Ragamuffin, which is Ian Boyd. What was his situation?
Thank you guys put me on the Rice. I'm furious that you convinced me to take out DD. Not sure we did that.
Look, it was one of those scenarios, and it would have been great on the Wednesday podcast to know that we weren't going to get that DD injury update. And as Benny Packer said, we were equally as fuming at the Kings. It'd be great. Like, I follow the NFL. The injury reports at every single practice. You know what's going on. There's not too many surprises. It'd be great if we could have something like that. And it was only really late in the piece where I decided, look, I'll risk DD. And essentially that would have been a disaster because I would have missed out on DD's score if I had traded early and Jarek's score as well. So DD double disaster basically. So Banksy, do we have to explain the partial lockout, mate? Essentially, your players, you did with the vice captain, that was a good point, but on occasion, all you really need to know is that your player locks when they play their first game, right?
Correct, yeah.
Unless you've got one of them as your captain or your vice captain, then they are locked. You cannot trade them out.
Correct. And you've just got to be careful. You don't want to, if you do want to trade that person, then your trade target still hasn't played a game for the week out as well.
Very good point. So this is becoming a thing, this game time decision boost that these players are getting. Obviously, DD had his best shooting performance. It was like the preseason game that made me want to start DD in the first place. But Bogut did this to us earlier, coming off a score of I've got to be 21 against Adelaide, coming on the double. He'd be a player that you'd want to have, right?
But that's enough to put you off, isn't it?
Because this was the amazing physio that he's got, right? That all of a sudden he goes to the physio, comes out and has 82 fantasy points, followed by 73 fantasy points.
155 points on a game time decision.
Yeah, so that's pretty impressive. And there was one more that I forgot about.
Casper.
We had Casper.
Oh,
I think it was it last week or the previous round as well. He was also a game time decision, and I think we had a couple of tweets asking us was Casper worth bringing in the double as well. And again, probably our fault for putting people off and suggesting he's a game time decision. So probably not the risk, but again, he came out and put up some huge numbers yet again on the game time decision. So now we have the three Kings that have done exactly the same thing.
Yeah, okay. Speaking about Kings, DD is obviously a hot topic now because he's, it and a bit. But I know that when we were out and he had his score, he was saying that he's repaying us the faith. But to be honest, he hasn't yet in my books. Bordy, we both own him from the start of the season, and if we had have gone tape, for example, we'd be miles ahead of where we are right now.
Correct.
It's a bit of recency bias, I think, and now, and I think we've got the tweet there from Paddy Boyd, who has the same sort of thoughts as us.
Traded out DD last round for Drimic for his 2 doubles in a row. One crazy game isn't going to make me trade him back just yet, with singles coming up. Current trade plans are Bogey over Creek, Bogey for Creek, RJ for Bruce to get more cash so I can upgrade Noy or Jarek soon. Yeah, and I think you're right. We would be ahead if we had just Tate from the start. But I guess the boom potential, game high 60 for DD, whereas Tate's high is Tate's high is at 50 now. So
I love it when that goes.
But yeah,
And
Tate's definitely been probably more consistent strength.
And that's how that indirectly affected me as well. I brought in Tate last week thinking that DD wasn't going to play. And we saw what Tate did in the first couple of rounds where he put up those big numbers, got those extra minutes with DD being out. So that affected me. I was looking like, we'll talk about it in a few minutes, but I was looking like the top bloke because I took advantage of that extra trade with us thinking last podcast that DD was actually going to be out for the round. And obviously, again, game time decision. And he came in and smashed it and did a lot better than Tate that I brought in.
All right, but there is a risk with DD.
Well, apart from the fact that every time he gets touched, he's not that bad, but we've had cramps, we've had the hit, which he had 7 the week before.
He is Brazilian, so they've got that soccer player sort of easy diving sort of.
Didn't want to say it.
I'm happy to say because I'm a soccer non-lover. So, does he fall over a little bit like Brazilian soccer players do a little bit?
Well, I'm going to move on to the other risk, which is that it's been widely reported now by Matty Moog. There was a contract clause that we weren't aware of previously, which we are now, where DD, essentially if it's the 31st of December deadline, if he stays past that, then he's theirs for the year.
Yep.
But up until that point, the Pals can recall him. So just logically, I mean, people have analysed this to the death, I guess, but it doesn't really make sense, I don't think, despite their injuries. I think they should just keep tanking because obviously he's improving, which is what they want to see. And guys, he's learning English. I don't know if you saw that, but DD's learning some good Australian. I can't remember the tweet. It has since been deleted, but it was something like DD said that he's having a king legend of a game.
That's what I put it.
Yeah, so he's learning some Australian. So
That great effing game.
yeah, that's right. So what's there to lose? Just hope he stays here. Massive game this week against Mello. That's going to be awesome. Could be record-breaking, fellas. So I can't wait, and I hope he continues to repay the faith. So
moving right along.
Speaking of King Legend, we've got DD, who was dominant in the King Legend Award this week, and he had 55% of the vote. So hopefully we see him there a few more times because his Holt Award nominations are definitely exceeding his King Legend Award nominations at the moment. So, Banks, are you right to take that Holt Award?
A Holt Award, so we had 57% for RJ Hampton. You boys were at the game. I was very disappointed watching that he was ejected very early on, but from a basketball perspective, what were your thoughts on the call?
Well, it was not good for basketball perspective because I wanted to see him play. But I guess to the letter of the law, you could argue that it was fair and just. But you noticed someone that was very unhappy about it, or did I notice?
Well, to be honest,
I think I noticed.
well, Matt Walsh,
Yeah.
just got up. Who's
He was sitting behind the bench.
who's LK's offside?
Jerry Longinger.
Longer, yeah.
So he was, Matty Walsh was sitting behind the Breakers bench the whole game, and when that decision was made,
he
fair to say, he
got
wasn't
up,
happy
stormed
about it.
off. He went and picked someone out of the crowd. Didn't know. Then we recognised it was Jeremy Loliger, and tore absolute shreds off him.
NBL CEO, and there was a discussion. There was a heated discussion for a good probably 2 minutes before Jeremy walked away.
Yes.
So the best thing to do while
Yeah.
Matt was still flinging arms around.
Wow, hey.
It was interesting. Yeah, it was interesting. It was courtside,
right.
so I'm surprised that a smart cameraman didn't get it on camera. But
Look, we're not going to go through the unsportsmanlike thing. You can find that in a lot of other places. Firstly, I'm not that upset about it, to be honest. But look, someone who missed out on DD's great effing game and also had RG this week was the expected top bloke, but apparently ordinary bloke of the round, Banksy.
That was me this week. So 593 points is what I scored, and we touched on it last pod as well. Of you were encouraging me, Benny, to take advantage of that second trade with most people having to replace DD. So I brought in Tate. DD obviously ended up playing, and that was that. I went from what should have or was looking like being top bloke for the week, having that second trade on my sleeve compared to what you guys had to, with having to probably use 2 injury trades, to being the ordinary bloke for the week.
yeah,
That's it. Next up, average bloke.
average weight was myself, so got back into the top 100 again, which I'm pretty happy about. 606 for the deep ballers in this round, and team's looking not so bad.
And Banksy, did you mention your ranking?
No, sorry, 32nd overall now.
So I think this is the first time that we've all been in the top 100
At the same time?
at the same time.
Yeah.
So this is good. So onwards and upwards from here. I was 72nd, 71st, 1st and 5th. Now I'm just playing on 7th. So pretty happy with that. I had RJ and it still managed. I think I finished 16th for the round.
Yeah, nice.
I am still gonna hurt this week though, which we'll talk about a bit more later on. But what hurts a bit more is shout out to Nick Turner. This is our league shout out that we normally do. Awesome to see. I'm 7th in the universe and I'm 6th in our league. So everyone, that's pretty awesome. Everyone is basically up there. I'm not gonna. We've got to try to get that other guy on board, or hopefully he'll drop off because he's not listening, I guess. But Nick Turner's team, Banksy,
He's winning the comp.
He's winning the comp, and he's already set up for doubles. So go through his team. He's gonna. I'm exactly 69 points behind him, and what sucks is that he's gonna just kick ahead of me by miles.
If you're out there having a look, it's MT Rising is his team name.
Easy to find, top of the rankings.
And he's really set up for that round 9 where United's the only team on the double, isn't he? He's just got Mitch McCarron. He's got obviously Long, like most of us, but he's also got Trimble, I think, who's only roughly 6% owned from memory there as well. So he's even got Drimic there on his bench, ready for the doubles this week as well.
So he's already got 3. So he's got Kay, Drimic, and Pinot, who are going to be on the doubles this round with 2 trades up his sleeve. I'm going to have probably 3 on the doubles after my trades. He could really, to be honest, kick ahead. So great stuff, Nick.
And there's real no poor players on his roster there, to be honest. Probably the only one there, which most of us have, is Noy, which you can probably trade out this week, potentially as well. But there's every other position on his roster there is a solid player moving into the next 3 or 4 weeks, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Move Start on. And sit. What are we talking?
Yeah, so we got some questions. Thanks very much, as usual. So the most popular one, Boyd, which we got very early in the piece and was going to be a thread for conversation this week. We actually put a poll out on.
So we did. We were getting lots of questions earlier in the week about no or long. So we said start question. Who would you choose? Dane Pinot on the double this week, or Sean Long on the single? Obviously, United. Phoenix play. United play Phoenix. So Phoenix play United, and then Phoenix also play Adelaide at home. So the Phoenix have got 2 games in Melbourne. So which would you be going? And it was we had 150 votes, which is pretty impressive.
At the time of screenshot.
Thank you for that, and thank you for all those voters. And with 75% going Dane Pinot on the double, Sean Long on the single.
So numbers obviously are overwhelming for selecting Pinot over Long on your court, but worth noting, Long in his 2 matchups against your boys' Phoenix team this season, he has gone 72 and 75, and they've really fed him the ball against that, the size of the Phoenix inside as well. Just having a really quick look, Pinot 17 last time out against Melbourne is worth noting, if that scares anyone off. But he did have 36 the game prior, but he did have that massive 64 last time he played against Adelaide as well, if you remember.
All right, it's good stats. Don't go into fantasy captain's territory too early. Next question of the week, we retweeted a couple of tweets. So we had Quagmire come on board and ask us to retweet who to start this week. Or you might not even ask us, but we did it anyway. So no. Pinot and K, Pinot and Long, or K and Long. And it was all pretty even, 117 votes for that one. And just in front was Pinot and K, both players on a double, obviously. Closely followed by Pinot and Long, with K and Long third.
Quite surprising that it's that close now between starting Nick K on the double compared to Long on the single. Only 3% of votes.
Yeah,
he's hurt a lot of people, hasn't he?
He has.
He has those 100K drops as well.
Well, I think his last 3 and 5 game averages are not the greatest. So,
well, on that,
34.
Ask us to retweet your stuff, because obviously you get a better consensus, and it actually takes pressure off us as well. We just read out the stuff, so you can't blame us. That was the consensus that said to start the team the way that it came out. So moving on.
Yep.
So trade targets. Let's have a look. So we had
heaps of options.
There are, but Nick Hills sent us top 5 trade targets this week to discuss.
All right, so I've laid these out for you fellas in teams. So firstly, if you want to use, I just want to go through them and then we'll try and narrow it down.
Well, this is obviously the teams on the double, isn't it? So we've obviously got the Phoenix, we've got Perth, we've got Adelaide. They're the 3 teams on the double this week. And if we're talking who are going to be your trade targets from each team, if we start with Phoenix, obviously you've got Creek, is an out-and-out target this week. We know what he can do. We've got Pinot, who's probably been the value player of the competition this season.
MVP.
Finally on a double. And then you've got Roberson, who can go huge.
Robertson, yes.
How do you pronounce Roberson?
Roberson, yeah.
Roberson.
It's funny because they had Simon Mitchell at a press conference said, look, stop there, it's Robertson. Ty Wesley on overtime said, stop there, it's Robertson. And then I heard an ad through the week of Dane Pinot trying to get some extra ticket sales or sign up membership, and he said, come see John Roberson. So I don't know if that's Dane just having maybe it's a in joke with the guys, but I'll do Perth. We've got obviously Cotton and K, the 2 that are potentially the options there. Adelaide boys, Bordy.
Adelaide, DJ, Drimmick, Griff, Randall, and more.
So
plenty of options there. Obviously, Adelaide on the double.
The double.
So
if we're going to pick one, I've got a clear number 1. I've got Bogut. Do we all have Bogut
As the trade out?
Yeah. Do we all have Bogut in our team?
Yeah.
And are we all bringing in Creek?
100%.
Yes.
Yes. So that's
there. You go.
There's number 1. So and Creek over K by a mile, to be honest. So Banksy, I don't know if you want to give away your second trade or what you're not too sure what you're doing.
Well, at this
Nah,
stage,
you're right,
no, I'm happy to say. So at this stage, highly likely that I'll be bringing Pinot into my team. So should have been one that I started with. I know you both started with Pinot, and this is where it would hurt me if I don't play him this week, finally being on a double as well. And again, he's going to go up by 100k regardless, so it's a win-win.
What about Cotton VK? If you're in that 6-man spot and that's the trade you want to do.
Well, we know what K can do. He's very consistent.
Back my boy K in, I reckon.
Yeah, the only problem with K is probably guaranteed again this week, based on what we saw with his price fluctuation after last round. He's likely going to shed more cash yet again, isn't he?
And I guess
I did like how the way he played last week though a little bit more. Like I know we were commenting on it the week before how he was sitting out on the 3-point line a lot. I feel like last week he got back in there. I know he had a 46, but I still feel like he was getting back in there a bit more in the post, doing the work that he is more well known for doing. So
I think he boosted his score quite a bit in the second half because I was quite happy with my Cater Bogut trade at halftime in that game, that's for sure.
I think he lost quite a few points in the adjustments as well. I think he actually scored a 50 odd. So
yeah,
he was
it
brought
was,
right
yeah.
back post adjustments as well.
Now, this is where it's tough with these Adelaide boys. I find it really difficult to trust any of them from a fantasy perspective. And we had...
There's one there you can trust a fair bit, but it's boring and it's not sexy.
Explain that.
DJ.
DJ is, for me...
He's the 8th ranked player in the comp.
He has to be in the
Fantasy.
top 3 of the list of trading targets.
You would think so,
Yeah.
and it's a boring choice, all right? Because I mean, some would argue the way he plays is a little bit boring to a basketball fan, but he puts up scores like his game high 61, his game lows 32. So that floor is pretty good. So even on a double, you're looking at let's say a 64 minimum.
And we had, if you're thinking about going the cheaper sort of power forward option, maybe, which is Griffin, we had Benny Packer send out a tweet. Do you do DJ and have $1.64 million in the cap, or Griffin and have 1.14 in the cap? And 60% said to actually pay up for DJ.
Yeah.
So that definitely advocates that he has to be a prime trade target.
And the reason for that is, if you're looking to bring Griffin in this round, Adelaide, obviously, they have 6 doubles over the next 8 weeks. So they've got an amazing schedule, one of the best schedules you're likely to get throughout the season. But Griffin is just too foul trouble prone. He's scored an 8, he's scored an 18, and he's already scored a 21 this season. So for me, that's enough to scare me off.
And did you have some other notes on the Adelaide boys, Banks? I think you mentioned you had.
Look, obviously the other one people are really discussing is Drink.
Mm-hmm.
He's been as consistent as I've ever seen him play year in and year out. Yeah, I don't think he's had actually a bad score this season.
17 is lower.
Has he really scored a 17?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I mean, that shows what Jimmy can actually do. But, I mean, with that being said, he hasn't played Perth yet. He played Phoenix a bit earlier in the season. He scored a 30 against them in round 4. So his price is up there now. I mean, he's not as cheap as he was a few rounds ago when people were starting to look at him when they were looking at the schedule. So I think he's 1.25 million now. So he's not cheap compared to what's out there. But I think he'd be the secondary option. If you're going to look at choosing someone from Adelaide based on their schedule, he's probably your next go-to, would you say?
I'd say so. But if you're a seasoned NBL fantasy player, you might be a little bit scared of Dermot because he has burned us before.
And that's my bias. He absolutely burnt me last season.
Same with me.
I think I started with him. I think we talked him up as a value pick. He was obviously a lot cheaper at the start of last season to now. But he didn't start the season well, and he had the whole injury saga held him through that as well.
All right. So hopefully that covers off on a few of them. It's not, I guess we haven't really ranked them, but we've talked about them a little bit in the team. So
can we touch on one that you're considering?
That is
No.
a little bit further down the track.
Is it? Yeah, let's go later. We'll do it later.
Because there's a lot of RJ Hampton type talk. So we've got some Matty Murphy's talked about it. So let's do that. So the biggest
other one's the bench options.
Yeah.
Is that what we're talking?
Well, we're going to do we got I guess a heap of questions about Sunday deck because he obviously went nuts. So we had the injury to Brooks. They still haven't signed a replacement. Sunday is point guard, shooting guard eligible. and I can't even remember what his score was. It was about 60 or something like that, wasn't it? It was pretty damn high. So went up the 100K and he played some decent sort of minutes. So we had Paul send in, do we grab Sunday deck, even if it's a bit of reversion to the mean, it still means he's going to get a truckload of cash. Quagmire was wondering that too. Whenever I have a question or anything involving the Illawarra Hawks, I turn to Julian O'Brien of the Illawarra Mercury, sent him a message, and I said, we missed the game, because we did. We were out. And I asked, do you think we can expect 15 minutes per game from Sunday going forward? Or is it a case of going with the hot hand? And does this impact the need to get that import guard position? Because obviously they come out with their little doco that they do and said that that's what they sort of settled on. I don't think that's necessarily the right way to go personally. So that's the risk with Sunday. If they get an import in, then his value's gone straight away, back to what it was. So Julian came back and he said that we've always been guard heavy by circumstance. He'd love to see them keep playing these young guys now. Finals are out of the equation, row them. It's always horses for courses, but with the friendly ghost in Sydney, he expects Sunday will see plenty of court time again on a Sunday. So, yeah, just on that, we'll go with another pun that we got, which is the other side of the equation, which is from Neil Wright, which says, he thinks the deck was rigged. Not in a month of Sundays would I be touching that. So we've got polar opposites of the pun world here, and also of what we think Sunday deck can do. We're going to have, I guess, what are your guys' thoughts on Sunday deck, I guess, as the role? It seems as though he's going to have Casper Ware. They still haven't signed an import.
Nah.
I can see why people are looking at it. I mean, if you need the cash grab, you've got to make some cash by downgrading someone on your bench. I can see, obviously, why you would look at that. He is going to increase in price.
Better options out there, though. They've only got 5 games in 5 weeks. You can try and, with your benchies, you can try and get a Mirko to sneak up with a nice little 40 or whatever, because on the doubles,
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. That's the reason I'm not looking at him, is just the
Fans have got
Illawarra's schedule puts me off. If I had some doubles upcoming, then I think I'd certainly be looking at
3 extra games over the next 5 weeks. I'd taking those 3 extra games maybe, but
Yeah, look, personally, if you're looking to go down the bargain basement and I think you've got that player for the season.
Yeah.
So in reality, they probably only have 1 or 2 games less for the rest of the season than anyone else. So I don't think you need to look at short-term fixtures as much if you're going down and he's your bargain basement player. So you'll find that there's actually only a couple of games like of what they play. If you look at the ladder, what's the difference?
Well, they've got 5 straight singles, but then they've got 4 doubles.
So they've played 9. 2 teams have played 7. So there's only
2 games difference.
So there's only 2 games difference. If you wanted to, you would basically be stashing that player for the rest of the season.
But you could always trade that player later as well for that.
Yeah. So we might move on to Mirko now, because this is a player who I thought we'd want to be trading up, but potentially with Sunday maybe we can go the other way, right? So as always, we got some puns. I think I said that we wanted some bonus point for any Mirko Jeric puns, and Denon sent in a beauty, which is Jeric get richer, which I was quite happy.
Ben even commented to me about that one earlier today. So yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was good. Any of you want to risk pronouncing or reading out some of the other ones on Jeric? No. So Jack coming with those who kept Jeric showed the Murkov a champion, and prior to last round, do you reckon he's finished making money? Mirko had other ideas. That was from NBLDT. Nick is a great follow on Twitter at NBL_DT. If you play fantasy, you must be following him. And the question of this is, what do we do with the Serbian sniper? He was about to be axed, and then he pulled a 40 out of his.
Wow.
He had a 40.
Player stats,
Yeah. So he had a 40. So obviously we got Jeric's. He's had his score. He's going to keep making money. I would argue that now Kawatnoi is potentially a bigger trade target out for me than Mirko.
Yeah, I agree with that, Benny. I think what he had, he's had one big game.
First one.
The first game of the season, he had his 50, and then from there it's sort of been all downhill, really. So he's had I mean, he's floor for a player you've only played 250 grand for. It's not. Was it 250 grand? I think so. Yeah, 250 grand. It's not all bad. I mean, he's had his lowest has been a 16, but he's also had a 17 and a 19 and a 20. So
Well, he's either been in the teens or he's been in the 20s since that big 50 you saw in the very first game of the season.
But people forget that if they've had him since the start, they've paid 250 grand for him. So if he's just sitting on your bench, it's actually not so bad. But it's to the point where you for the value that he's at now, 750k, you might be able to actually get something better for him now until the end of the season. But if you don't have the luxury of being able to use that trade, then it's not the end of the world.
And for me,
hence why he's owned by 45% of the people still.
Still owned, yeah. Look, I would be keeping Paul as the answer to the question. I'd be keeping him for a while. He's not that high priority trade outs, but someone who might be. We got the question from Maddie's Marauders, Matthew Murphy, who coaches the Marauders. Hampton to who? Are either of you considering trading out Hampton? Is my first question to you, fellas.
No.
I'm not in a position to.
Same.
They've obviously got the 3 singles straight from here after their really good run of doubles. But I think Hampton's got a bit more left in him. If you've got that luxury trade, I mean, there's obviously point guards you can be trading him to on the double. But for me, I'm holding.
Yeah, I'm holding, and he's going to the bench at the moment because obviously Lamelo, I've got his other point guard. He's definitely scoring higher than him, and they're both on singles. So I'm just riding with Lamelo as my starter and Hampton on the bench at present.
Okay, so for me, the plan was always to play Mello this week, and then Mello to Machado sort of sideways next week when Cairns pick up their good fixture. It's obviously recency bias, but now I don't want to trade Mello. Yeah. I'm looking at moving RJ, and there are options. Obviously, you can go down to Bruce or down to Deck.
Yep.
Both good options. And the other one, which we had Jason Valles say that this was not asking a question, he was just saying what his trades were, which is he was going even from Bruce to Deck to get the little bit of cash, and then he's going RJ to Randall for the double. So that is actually an option I'm considering. I can do Noy to Robertson. I can do obviously RJ to Randall, and it's I don't know. Can either of you talk me out of Jerome Randall? I mean, I know I messaged Ben Packer and he said he hasn't. He is our 36ers fan, resident 36ers fan. But
this is my argument for you then.
Thank you. Please
Okay.
have it.
Randall's averaged 29 over his last 5. So he's not cheap. I mean, what is he? 1.2 something mil. So he's not a cheap player that you bring in. I think you'd expect a bit more than 29 if you're going to pay that.
Because I haven't watched a lot of games. I feel like I would prefer him over Drummich. Obviously, I'm really biased in that. And not having watched a lot of basketball Adelaide games this season, I can feel like, there's that upside, but it may not be the case, you're saying.
Well, 4 out of his last 7 games, he's gone below 30, which I think is very subpar for his price tag. And the other thing that really scares me off, I know you're thinking longer term because they have the great schedule, but I always worry when he's going to come up against Perth and he's going to be playing up against the Martin matchup as well.
This week.
Yeah, which you can always sense a lower score.
And again in round 9.
What did he have against the Phoenix this week? The last time he played in Boydo?
16.
Oh, 16.
So I reckon you should do it.
It's obviously a risk. And
you are 7th or whatever, so why not just do it?
Yeah. It's definitely
trying to overtake him, boy.
Yeah. So, look, if I do Jerome, I expect big things, man. So, don't expect him to be mentioned in this next segment. But Banksy, you want to run through some captains, mate?
Better bring my captains up.
Apologies for the lack of sound. We're having some technical difficulties tonight. So if you're watching on the live stream, you won't get the beautiful dulcet tones of one of us 3 in the Banksy's Captain's jingle.
You're not going to do it live?
No.
It's a bit risky, isn't it?
Okay.
All right.
I don't have my xylophone on me.
Let's get stuck into it. So first thing obviously I look at is who's on the double, as we've touched on, Adelaide, Perth and Phoenix on the double this week. Number 4, I've gone with someone who hasn't featured in our captain segment this week, and that would be now known as not Robertson, but John Robertson.
Randall. Oh, sorry. Go.
No Randall will be featuring in the captains this week. So Phoenix plays Melbourne away and Adelaide at home. So you could almost call that 2 home games for the Phoenix this week. They don't play a lot of away games if you've looked at their schedule there.
Only one will be at the fire pit.
Now, Robertson has scored 29 and 30 over the last 2 games he's played this season against United. So they're not obviously great numbers. But he put up a massive 62 back in round 4 against Adelaide. So he had a night out there. What I do like, if you were to look at Robertson, if you don't have those other players in the top 3, he's playing 2 fast-paced, high-scoring matches. I think he deserves some recognition as well. So when we look at averages in fantasy, he's actually the 5th highest fantasy scoring player in the league. He's got the same average of Nick Kay, if you can believe that. And he's only 3 points per game behind Bogut as well. His 2 scores, as I said, ain't great against United, but if you remember back to the very first game of the season where he matched up against them, he was in foul trouble for a lot of that game, so I don't read into that too much. One stat I have, and I think it was NBL Facts put it out on Twitter, which I thought was really noteworthy. Robertson scored a grand total of 5 first quarter points in 6 games. So he starts really, really slowly. That actually ranks him 73rd in the league for first quarters. Yet he actually leads the league in fourth quarter scoring at the same time with 8.7 points a quarter. So I think against these 2 sort of good matchups where it should be fast paced, if you can actually string together a full game instead of starting slowly, imagine the numbers we could see.
I like it actually.
Winning time, Bridgie Miller style.
Yeah, he could be unique.
Haven't seen a game where he's hit a bunch of threes again for a little while either.
So would you?
Ready to go.
So if you were me, would you do Noy to Robertson as my second trade, which I can afford?
Yes.
Over RJ to Randall.
I would 100% go Robertson over Randall.
Looks like I'm getting Randall.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Decision made. All right, let's move on. Number 3, I'm going to go with Bryce Cotton. Now, with his matchups this week, hasn't played Adelaide, but they are giving up just shy of 100 points a game. So there's certainly a team to score on. He scored just 26 when he matched up against New Zealand earlier in the season. But as we know, he's had some massive games this season. You only have to look to the last round when he matched up against league-leading Sydney Kings. He put up 36 actual points in the game, which translated to 54 fantasy points. What I do like, and something we were talking about just previous to the pod there off the pod, was Perth have had a really bad schedule. They've had 4 straight games away. But he's got the high, fast-paced, high-scoring match against Adelaide, followed by another game against New Zealand. But he's at home this time. That's where...
Not in the Adelaide game, the New Zealand game, yes.
The New Zealand game is at home. But we know Bryce, he traditionally scores better at home. He's already put up 2 big 60-plus scores at RAC Arena already this season. So I think we'll see a much bigger score for him this week.
Exciting stuff.
Like it.
Number 2, Nick Kay. Obviously, same as Bryce, hasn't played Adelaide yet. Are you questioning my number 2 positioning?
Nah, sounds good to me.
You're going to go number 1 anyway. But we've got to do due diligence. So if you're looking at Nick Kay, he put up 26 also against New Zealand like Bryce 2 weeks back, but I think we saw enough last week, as Boydie touched on before, where it might have been just a bit of a blip on the radar. He put up 46 against Sydney Kings last week, who have been locking down on bigs. But we're literally talking up the big 3 literally 2 weeks ago before that bad round from Kay. We were talking, you need to have Kay, Bogut, Long in your team there, the big 3 that were all averaging over 50 points a game just prior to round 5. He's still averaging over 45 on the season. So he's still one of those high-scoring players. And with the other 2 bigs not on a double this week, I think Kay could be one of the safer options, not necessarily the highest ceiling, but he would have one of the safer ceilings. But there is someone with a much bigger ceiling, I feel, this week, who takes out our number 1 spot, and that will be the week for Creek at number 1.
Week for
Oh,
Creek.
week.
Sounds
Right, same
exciting.
A lot of
Right up
Twitter
there.
chat about whether to bring in Creek this week because he's on the double, knowing he's got to obviously follow
No
some
brainer.
singles there. I think you bring in Creek this week on the double, you get 2 Creeks because he's going to be your captain. Okay.
Yep.
Pretty much 2 home
That's
games.
almost, you get 2 Creeks, it's almost a full head of hair. So it sounds bloody good to me.
So loves playing United, played them twice this season already. He's put up 72 and 52 in those matchups. Plays his old team. We talked up this is the revenge game. Last time he played Adelaide, didn't quite get up there. He put up a 40 back in round 4, but he did also foul out quite early in that 4th round. So hopefully doesn't go out as hard, but I think we could see a much higher score than 40 this time round against Adelaide.
Like it.
One thing I looked at was the averages. So if we take out that one bad game that a lot of Creek owners were really dissatisfied with, where he put up that dreaded 11 against Perth, he's actually averaged just shy of 60 across all the other games this season. That would actually put him on level pegging with Sean Long's average for the season, which would make him the highest averaging player in fantasy if it wasn't for that 11 against Perth. So outside of that blip on the radar, Creek would actually be the highest averaging player on the double this week.
No brainer to all 3 of us. We will all have Creek as captain this week. So
We'll do. Lock it in.
we're putting our money where Banks' mouth is.
That's it. Now, I don't know how many people are on the chat, but Bordy's, I think, asking me to ask if you've got any questions, put them through. In the interim,
There was one question there. Something about Sean Long, wasn't there? Injury?
I think
Mark Mark said Long's injury
Was it his
cloud
wife?
is what has scared me.
I think he's trying to give some bad advice to Marley, maybe. Anyway,
Now, it was mentioned by the commentators in the last Melbourne game that he was carrying a nil.
But
Yeah,
he's
but
he's fixing up his diet. He's doing what I should do, and
He's okay.
I don't think there's any risk
No, he's alright.
until because the NBL clubs are great with their injury news, so I guess there is always a risk, but nonetheless. So until some questions come up on the live stream, I'm just going to go through some that missed the cutoff before I took all the screenshots on my lunch break, of course, at work. So we had one from Taboo Boutique, who's
First time, long time?
no, second time and a long time. So runs a little bit of business out of New Zealand, North Island there. It says, sometimes pain can cause more pleasure. To me, it sounds like being a DD owner, to be honest. All that pain can cause a bit more pleasure. But it's a great point, to be honest, and something I wanted to discuss. So solely on schedule, Adelaide is the obvious choice to trade in. But is it worth taking the hit this round? I think this is something we've all discussed, not trusting the Adelaide guys so much and starting to stock up on your Melbourne players for that sole double in round 9. I think at this stage, I'm only going to have 3 Melbourne United players starting in that game, which will be at a disadvantage, obviously, compared to others that could have more. But is it too early to start thinking about that? Banks, you got the schedule there, mate. What do you think?
Well, remembering Melbourne are the only team in round 9 on the double, but they also have a single the following week. So they've really only got one double over a 4-week span.
Yeah.
But I get what they're saying. I mean,
I like your thinking, but are you going for? Are they just going for a round win?
Well, I think the other
It's a
thing,
long term game.
well, that's true. But also, I think the other thing they're saying is if you're going to avoid Adelaide players entirely, I mean,
Go somewhere. Where are you going if you don't go to Melbourne?
well, I think the problem with Adelaide is the minutes distribution. So they're a shared load team. They don't have any players that are playing huge minutes, and I think Froling, more those types of players are the result of the minute distribution that's happening in Adelaide. So, which isn't good for a fantasy perspective.
Yeah, good point. I think it's definitely a viable thing because I do not trust any of the
I got some more here.
Adelaide players. So
We've already answered the next one. 17.7. Rate DJ Creek K for this round's fantasy relevance. Cheers, fellas.
So
we prefer blokes over fellas. Just reading 17.7 though. But
oh, jeez,
Creek
Just
K, DJ.
Creek.
that's Banks' captain's Creek K DJ. I would go Creek DJ K
Oh,
because of the
Based on
additional
this
game.
week or schedule?
oh,
If you're looking at
whammy.
if you're looking at this round's fantasy relevance, you have to look into the future, right?
Well, you said this round.
This
does say
round's
he does
fantasy
this
relevance.
round.
So who is more relevant? What is important to
Oh,
a
you can
given
do K,
player?
you can do K to DJ next week if you really want to. If you want to take advantage of K this week.
Yeah, look, actually think DJ will outscore K, but you know, where he's coming
thanks,
32nd. I didn't see Nick K play last week. My lasting memory of Nick K at the moment is that Breakers game where he just hung out in the corner and
You sound like a hurt owner.
He's hurt.
yeah. So bias there, Dotty. But we got anything else that didn't make the cut? Let's have a quick flick through.
Not really sure on trades this week. I'd like to get Creek in, but means trading out Cotton or Webster. And Webster I just bought him last week. Also need to leave enough dollars to trade Hampton to someone decent. Feel your pain. That's obviously a question you need to sort out. I would be thinking Webster over Cotton because obviously Cotton's on the double this week. Matthew Murphy.
Tommy Hirsch.
On that as well, I'm actually a little bit worried because I own both Webster and also Bashley as well. I'm actually a little bit worried, obviously on the single, but they've also got their one single this week in Perth as well.
Can I ask you fellas, in your spreadsheets, are you planning on keeping Creek next week? Because we've got a tweet here giving advice. What we like to see you guys giving advice to each other is that people don't like bringing in someone for 1 week and then having to trade them out again. I don't have a problem with it.
Neither do I.
Jonty has said get Creek in and then trade him out to Patterson. That's my current plans. Have you guys looked ahead that far?
That's my current plan also as well, but it depends on what happens this week too. Plans change sometimes, but yes, that's the plan.
All pending injuries, isn't it?
Because I've got DJ sitting in the 6-man spot, so I can probably do DJ to Patterson if I needed to. If some funds allowed.
Will Rubian regret trading out Ball?
Yes.
Yes, for me as well. Was going to do it this week or next, probably next week, but I've opted for RJ instead. He's just going to keep making money, right? I'm assuming, like regardless of score. I have no idea how the prices work. How Rice only went up 50k or 500k instead of the full, or 50k instead of the 400.
And regardless of schedule, I mean, he's still putting up on singles 50, 60, 70s. He's putting up just as much as some of these point guards on doubles anyway. And I think maybe the viable option, maybe at least to hold out to round 9, maybe you might look at maybe going Ball to Trimble or something like that. But like a lot of people have tweeted us, Ball's going to probably hit that 2 million mark with the average that he has.
Maybe. DJ and Cotton or Creek and Griffin from Daniel or at DDPV13. C on DJ or Creek.
That's
well,
tough.
Banksy's captains said C on Creek.
So C on Creek is definitely the answer to that part of the question.
DJ
And because you want your C on Creek,
Creek and Griffin.
Yeah.
Risk it for the biscuit.
you cannot have the C on Creek if you do not get him in. So I'll be going Creek and Griffin. At least you're getting 2 games out of Griffin. Cotton's going to go next week.
You mean 4 games, but yeah.
4 games overall, 2 rounds. What else we got? We're scrolling up. Anything else there, fellas?
Is long a trade, especially if you don't have Bogut. We just spoke about that. Possibly Mark Ofo show gave us that Long is carrying some sort of knee injury. He had tape on the knee last week. But we haven't heard too much apart from what they said on the commentary. So is Long a trade? I'm not sure Long is a trade out. I think Long's a long-term hold for myself, I think.
If you're trading him out, you bring him back in 2 weeks anyway, aren't you?
And as Benny just pointed out to us, if you weren't paying attention before, how many games have Melbourne United played for the season? I think so for the rest of the season they've only got 1 less than everyone else. Is that right?
Yeah, so you can look at these things.
They've played 9. There's every other team played either 9, 7, or 8. So you're only getting 2 less games along, averaging 60-ish compared to someone else.
By making that trade out. Yeah.
And it's not even that. It's the round 9. He is the highest averaging player in the competition, and his team is the only team that's on the double in round 9. You need him for round 9.
Yeah.
And 37 minutes ago, we got another tweet from Paddy. Would you risk trading in Deck in the hope that he keeps up his minutes? We've definitely explained that there. It's not too bad. So, and that is the option for RJ Hampton. So I'm all for trading out RJ. It's probably something that I'm potentially going to do. He's going to have that 0 in his score, but that may impact his price. It will. Just quickly to finish up, because I think that's probably the last question we're going to have. To finish up on RJ in general, what did you think of him actually dropping the shoulder? I was
Like it.
I don't mind it.
Like it.
As long as it's not something that it can be continually rattled.
Yes. So what happened in that game? I think Madgen got him on a pretty decent screen the previous play. Obviously got a little bit of head of steam, and I think RJ definitely moved into that screen that he set. So I think it's just, unfortunately, it did get called. It was seen and got called. He laid that shoulder in, and he made a movement, unfortunately for him. But I like it because, when you're playing against blokes, they're going to try and do these sorts of things to you. And sometimes you just got to show them that you won't take it. And I know it didn't turn out well for him, but, sometimes those things in the NBA get, looked over. They don't actually see those, So just unfortunately, it was the way it goes.
Mark's got on the chat there asking about a question answer his question about Adnam. I've missed it, Marco, for show.
Oh, he said Adnam over Deck, I think, wasn't it?
Adnam over Deck. What are your thoughts on Kyle? The problem is with Adnam, and in Simon Mitchell's press conference, he actually came out and said it. Kyle was, and I agree 100%, he was the player that kept the Phoenix in that game for the first half. But then Robertson just got so damn hot that you just got to roll with it, and they're never going to play them both on the court at the same time.
They do play a couple of minutes here and there sometimes.
Not enough for fantasy balance anyway.
It brings the average height of the team down by about 3 feet, so they can't have both of them on.
Yeah, defensively, you'd think that that'd be an issue, right? So, all right.
Yeah, that's it. Wrapping it up. As always, on Twitter, @@BBall_blokes. You got any more for me?
That's it, mate.
All right, I think we're wrapping it up. So cheers for all the listeners out there. Once again, cheers to all the fireys up in New South Wales and Queensland. Thinking of you guys, even up here, down here in Victoria, and all the people that are residents in the areas that the fires are at the moment. So hang in there. The nation is behind you guys. So cheers.
That's it. I have recorded here, so that we will have a podcast. I will be staying up late.
Clearer version.
I will put an intro and an outro, and maybe see if I want to put some segment intros in there. I'm not sure. The video we will be putting, I think I'm going to download it so we can try put it on YouTube. We do have a YouTube page. On occasion through the week, we just catch up on Skype and we put that up on YouTube. I know we've got some feedback that people are keen for that. And look, I can see the old Xiaomi phone over there is running out of battery, boys. So
is it?
It is. So that's it.
Cool. Till next time, guys. Cheers.
Good luck.
Thanks, guys. Switch her off, Banksy. Oh, boy.